let's say there are two markets. I know in reality it is very difficult to find two markets that are identical, but let's say they're fairly comparable. Similar kind of demographics, similar population sizes, similar kind of economic development, comparable GDPs, comparable urbanization, etc., etc. In one of the markets, if you find that the per capita consumption of rice is three times more than that in the other market, it's explainable. So you would say that this is probably a rice-eating country and that is probably a flour or wheat-eating country. Okay. But if I take a common, routine, low visibility retail category like shoe polish, and if I tell you that in one of the markets, the per capita consumption of shoe polish is 8 times more than per capita consumption in the other market, I am sure you will say, hello, how come? 8 times more shoe polish consumption per capita? I mean, don't you think that there must be some insight or some reason why that kind of an abnormal per capita consumption exists vis-a-vis the other market? Yes, it definitely is abnormal. It definitely is an outlier. When you try to compare these kinds of categories, regular, common, some categories like this and some processes of the business ecosystem on islands with markets which are not islands, you would find a number of such observations which will make you sit up and say, hello, this is sounding different. So let's drill down a little bit on islands. Let me give you an example of Fiji in the South Pacific, where I've had the good fortune of working and living there for 4 years. Now, Fiji, as you know, is an island and surrounded by lots and lots of waters of the Pacific Ocean. With Australia and New Zealand as neighbors, with a whole lot of other South Pacific island nations such as Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Nui, etc., etc. So for instance, on Fiji, I observed a number of things which sounded peculiar and made me wonder why it is so there. For example, I found that the number of auditors in companies, not in any specific company, but right across companies, right across the country, I found that the number of auditors in companies are far higher than with markets which are typical and comparable to Fiji, okay, in terms of size and types of operation. So I found it very strange, and it made me wonder, why is this feature there in this business ecosystem? Another feature I found in Fiji is about the retailing practices and the way the pharmacies are presented to the customers. I found the pharmacies to be pretty much evolved when compared to other retail categories. For instance, either supermarkets or garment stores or electronic stores, etc. So it makes me wonder, how come pharmacies in particular, as a retail category, seem to have such very evolved retail practices? A third unique observation I found in Fiji is about the two-wheelers, or the absence of two-wheelers. Okay? That's a little like the dog that didn't bark. There are virtually no two-wheelers on Fiji. Now, the demographic, the levels of income of Fiji, the age distribution, the road infrastructure, the public transport facilities, the typical distance traveled by a working person from his residence to the office or to his workplace. When you consider all these factors, Fiji as a market is made for two-wheelers. Okay? But you don't find that category at all, or is extremely marginal. Probably on all South Pacific islands, but definitely in Fiji. Now, how come that category is completely missing? Similarly, on Papua New Guinea, which is in the neighborhood of Fiji and Australia and Indonesia, you find that shoplifting or pilferage at retail level is very high. We are talking about 25 to 35% is the level of merchandise that gets pilfered at the retail level. Not only in Papua New Guinea, it also happens in Samoa. It's as if shoplifting is a kind of a national sport on these two markets. As we drill down, we keep finding these kinds of unique, distinct features that exist only on island business ecologies. So this is an attempt to figure out why they exist on islands. That curiosity to find out makes you realize that there is one fundamental reason why it happens. And that is the unique geographical location and geographical factors that go with the islands. When you have lots and lots of water all around you, diffusion of a lot of things from the mainland to the island gets either slowed down or the diffusion signal becomes very weak. So we are talking about diffusion of ideas, beliefs, technology, practices, ways of doing things, fashion, etc. That diffusion gets slowed down and sometimes misses the island. So what is happening on the nearby neighboring major markets either is very slow to come to the islands or comes in a very different fashion or comes in a different sequence or completely misses the island, which makes the life on an island fairly different and unique, even though there are just 100 kilometers separating it from a major nation or a major market which is in its neighborhood. What really happens when the speed of diffusion slows down is that the frames of reference through which the islanders look at the world around them and give it a meaning, those frames of reference become very unique. Now, what is a frame of reference? A frame of reference is anything through which you look at reality and try to give it a meaning, give a meaning to the events that are happening around you. Now, frames of reference are made up of a lot of fuzzy things, like the values and principles and beliefs and schema of life and such things. So fairly fuzzy things, but one can change beliefs or principles or values, but those changes don't happen too quickly. So the frames of reference are fairly stable and are difficult to change. They're extremely crucial in defining the worldview, and the islanders' worldview is unique. There are three primal frames of reference that really make island nations stand out and have a very unique personality. Okay. One is a sense of shortage. Now, to explain a sense of shortage, we probably need to go back 100,000 years or maybe a million years. Okay. But that is a very primal frame of reference for an islander, okay. A sense of shortage. A second primal frame is a sense of strong cohesion. And the third is the sense of anonymity or the law of small numbers. We'll go into details of all these three primal frames and understand how they relate to the business ecology that exists on these islands and what's the impact that they have on day-to-day life, which is important for you to understand as a business person to establish and grow brands and businesses on these islands. Okay. So all this will be explained in my next video. It will be a trip in psychohistory. Make sure that you subscribe so that it will appear on your feed. Thank you.